This is Join Us in France, episode 296. Bonjour, I'm Annie Sargent, and today I bring you a conversation with Lisa Wylie about walking the Chemin de Compostelle. We mostly talk about walking the Chemin du Puy, or Via Podiensis. There are 4 major routes for the Camino in France. One starts from Paris, another from Vézelay, another from Arles, and the one we'll talk about today is from Le Puy-en-Velay. That's in the Auvergne, 180 kilometers west of Grenoble. No matter what route pilgrims took, and many pilgrims came from much further than that, the goal for them was to walk all the way to Saint-Jacques-de-Compostelle, or Santiago de Compostela in Spanish, so they could worship the relics. You know how Muslims still go to Mecca at least once in their lives? It used to be that Christians also went on pilgrimages, and there were 3 major ones. One to go to Rome, one to go to Jerusalem, and one to go to Compostela. This pilgrimage has been done since the Middle Ages, but by now most walkers are not doing it for religious reasons. By now it's a journey of self-discovery, but it's also one of the most wonderful ways to get plenty of exercise, discover France, and hang out with lots of French walkers, at least if you walk the French parts. Like anything else, there are parts of the Camino that are more popular with tourists than others, parts where it's crowded, really crowded. And we get into that too with Lisa because, we want to keep it real. Thank you, patrons, for giving me a precious gift, the time to produce this podcast. Your monthly gift make it all possible for me to produce this podcast, and in these times of great uncertainty and anxiety, I cannot tell you how much it means to me. A shout out to new patrons and more info on how to join my wonderful supporters after the interview. Show notes for this episode are on joinusinfrance.com/296. And this week, you'll see the photos of the Chemin de Compostelle submitted by Lisa by following Addicted to France on Instagram. I'm going to make some changes to the Join Us in France newsletter and send out my favorite recipes and French tips for the kitchen. Because while many of us can't travel yet, we can enjoy France through food. If you'd like to subscribe, look for the green button that says Extra on the joinusinfrance.com website. I'll also give you a short update on the pandemic in France after the interview. Bonjour, Lisa, and welcome to Join Us in France.
Bonjour.
How nice to have you. Today we are talking about your walk of the French Camino. Explain just a little bit what it is and where you went, where you started, where you ended, all of that good stuff.
Well, the French version of the Camino, or the Chemin Saint-Jacques, as it's called in French, there are actually 4 different modern-day routes through France, and the most known and the most traveled is called the Chemin du Puy, or the Latin name is the Via Podiensis, and it starts in Le Puy-en-Velay, which is in the Massif Central, pretty much like in the middle of France, and then it goes southwest, more or less a direct line to Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, right near the Spanish border. The way I always explain it to because most Americans, or many, have never heard of it, and they all know about the Camino. And so I say, well, Spain's on this peninsula, and back in medieval times when people would hike, or walk the pilgrimage route to Spain, they had to get to Spain. There weren't airplanes, back in the Middle Ages.
No.
Or trains. So to get to Spain, they had to go through France.
Right.
And so you had these four, right, one kind of coming from the north, one from the east, one from Italy. And so those are the origins of the chemin in France.
Yeah. And so, but on this trip, you just went between Cahors and Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port.
Yeah, so this particular trip I did in last year, 2019. And I started in Cahors, and 4 years prior to that, I had done the sections between Le Puy and Cahors. And then I had a break, and then I came back and took it up again. And actually, that's many French people do that. They'll take, they'll maybe like 2 weeks of their vacation, and they'll do, a bunch of étapes, sections along the way. And then, they'll go home, and then they'll come back like the next year and pick up where they left off.
Right. Yes, I have relatives who did the whole thing in one time, but it was before they went back to work. And I'm hoping to have them on the podcast because they both speak very good English. So it'd be good to have them on the podcast. But yeah, that's unusual. Most people do it in sections.
Yeah, and it takes, depending on how fast you walk, it takes, probably a minimum of 3 weeks if you walk like really fast to do the whole thing from Le Puy to Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. This last trip, I walked an average 12, 14 miles a day. And it took me 3 weeks from Cahors to Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port.
So that's 20 kilometers, more or less. So between 16 and 20 kilometers a day.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, that's a lot of walking. I do 6 a day. And, I could do easily 10 a day. But 16, I don't know. I guess I'd have to train to it.
Yeah, well, and training definitely helps. I walk an hour a day just at home walking the dog.
Mm-hmm. That's what I do.
But it's different when you have a pack on. So you definitely want
to
definitely want to do some training because you feel it in your knees for sure.
Yeah.
But you get into a rhythm, and personally, I also love having hiking poles. And they're like proven to relieve the stress on your knees and your legs. Takes like 30% of the weight off, basically.
Cool.
And for me, I find that I walk faster with the hiking poles because I kind of get into a rhythm. And actually, I literally I walk faster.
Yeah. So did you have a walking pole? You mean like sticks, generic sticks that you got, or did you have actual hiking poles with the with the grip and all that?
Real hiking poles.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I got it like REI.
Yeah, and some of those are way better than others because I have 2 sets. I use them sometimes. I have 2 sets. I have one that, for some reason, when it hits the ground, it kind of vibrates funny. And the other set doesn't do that. It's aluminum. The aluminum doesn't do that. So, try them before you go because they're not all, made equal.
Yeah, the ones I have I really like because they're women specific. And so the grips are smaller, and I have small hands, and they fit my hands. And also you can take them apart. So when you when you fly, they can actually fit in your pack.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So you carried your everything with you on your back. Tell us about that.
Well, you want to travel light because you are going to be carrying it all on your back.
Yeah.
A general rule of thumb is a pack that's no more than about 28 liters, which is kind of like a large day pack. You're not going to take like a full-on backpack that you would, if you go like hiking in the Sierra Nevada mountains or something,
Right, because you didn't have to take a sleeping bag or a tent or cooking utensils or anything like that.
No, basically what I did and what worked really well is I have one change of clothes. So basically I have like 2 outfits. I have like 2 like t-shirt tops, 2 pant bottoms, both of which are sort of, like you can roll up to make into capris, so they're kind of convertible. Another top, and then like a jacket, and all like, super lightweight, kind of aimed for backpacking, and then just like toiletries. I did carry what they call, the French call a sac à viande, which is like a little, which is a little, like a little sleeping sack. So if you're staying like in a youth hostel or in France, you stay in the gîte, it's a lightweight little sleeping sack.
Huh.
And so, I think most people have them, and the expectation is that you have your own.
I see. So you don't stay at regular hotels most of the time?
No. Some people do, but, honestly, most parts of the Chemin, it's not an option. Most of the accommodations are what they call the gîte. Right.
So this is what makes the Chemin or Camino different from other places. Like I've listened to this book about hiking the Appalachian Trail, where you're in nature most of the time. Like there's nothing around. There's a few towns, but you'll come across a town every few days. My understanding is with the Camino, you're mostly around villages and places that have some life anyway.
Oh yeah, and in fact it was kind of funny. Like one day I stopped in a cafe, to have a coffee or something. And I was talking with a French couple that was also hiking, and we were talking about, they said, oh, is there anything like this, in America? And I said, well, not really. Because, our hiking is what we call a grande randonnée in America. You're really out in the woods, out in nature. Whereas France, it's like, it's very civilized, like stop at a cafe.
Right. Yeah, you have lots of places where you could stop. So if you didn't want to walk 16 to 20K a day, could you do it just doing like 10K a day?
Oh, yeah. And in fact, the first time that I went with an acquaintance, and she didn't want to hike as much. And so there we had planned an average of 10 miles a day. Right.
So that's like
which we did.
14, 15 kilometers a day.
Yeah. And that was like totally doable. Yeah. And then the other option, which I hadn't known about the first time I went, is they have these what they call like transport services, which are basically people in like little vans that will shuttle your bags or whatever, even people, between the étapes or the stops. And so some people will do that. They'll walk, but then if they don't want to carry a pack, they'll have their bags transported. Okay. And so, and that's actually a super good option. And then it's also nice if, like, let's say you twist your ankle or something and you can't walk. And I met some people that's what happened. This woman, she twisted her ankle and she couldn't really hike, but then she was with her husband. So she took a couple of days rest, and then she just took this little transport shuttle from one spot to another.
So did you list any of these transport services in the stuff you sent me? Maybe not.
No. But once you're there, you'll see they put their little business cards up in the gîtes and they're also listed if you. Well, I don't know if they're listed in the guides or not, but you could just ask. Any of the gîtes, or they could connect you with them. Right.
Yeah, and in your guest notes, you've listed several of these gîtes, so you could contact any one of them, and they probably could hook you up with the right people.
Yeah, and they may be listed in what I call the Bible of the Chemin, which is this. A book called Nyam Nyam Dodo.
Great name.
So, which for if you're not up on your French juvenile slang, Yum Yum refers to, it's sort of like baby talk. It's like baby talk for eating, and then dodo is sleeping.
Eat, sleep.
So it's like eat, sleep, in baby talk.
Yeah. Well, that's a great name. Not something I would have ever thought to search for, mind you. They probably wrote this before Google.
Yeah, they actually. Yeah, they. It's a couple that they self-published it, and it's become like I would call it the Bible of the Chemin. It's this handy guide, and it's not so much of a guidebook, doesn't list museums or
right.
It's just it's a reference. So it lists, and they update it every year. To try and really keep it up to date. And so it just lists all the different accommodation options that there are, the gîtes, the chambre d'hôte, the occasional hotel. And then also it shows, where there are places to eat, where you can buy groceries, where there's an ATM.
Yeah.
And then it gives maps.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever get lost?
No.
Because it's difficult to get lost, or because you're good at it?
Both. Both. And one time, I think not this particular trip, but the first one, there was one time when I came to this sort of crossroads and it wasn't marked very well, and I started down a road and I thought, I don't know if this seems right. And so in that instance, what I used, which was very handy and I recommend, is an app that accompanies the Yum Yum Dodo book. So they have an app that you can get on your smartphone. And it's got you can see yourself on the route. So it's got, a little moving blue dot that sort of follows the route. And so that's really handy, so that if you do, think am I on the route or not? You can look and it'll show you on the app, the white line for the route, and then you can see the little blue dot.
Yeah, if your dot is in the right place.
Yeah,
that's cool. That's very cool. Well, that's good. So they wrote the book long ago, but they've got an app, so that's perfect.
Yeah.
So everywhere you went at night, even if it was just a gîte or chambre d'hôte, chambre d'hôte would have it. But did you find places to plug in your phone every night?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so so it's not like you have to pack some sort of, I don't know, solar charge thing or whatever people do. Yeah. No. Okay, that's very good to know. Okay, so let's get back to the path you walked. You started in Cahors, and and then you just head out of the town and went to a place called Les Mathieux.
Yeah, so that's in terms of attractions and things. It's not the kind of trip in France you take where you're, let's go to the museum today, or let's, go here. I mean, basically, you just get up and you walk. That's all you do.
If you have 20K to do, you gotta get walking.
Yeah, I mean, and there were, in my notes, I say, there were some. Some fun little things I did along the way. But mostly, you just get up and walk. So the first day, I didn't actually get into Cahors till late afternoon. So the first day, I think I only walked 5 miles, maybe an hour and a half or something. Mm-hmm. And I stayed at this is called, Domaine des Mathieux. And that, it was fine. It was a nice home-cooked meal. It was funny. There was a group of 6 guys. They were all sort of friends, and they were all traveling together. And then there was me. So the owner put me in my own little dorm room by myself. So that was nice. Yeah.
Did you feel safe the whole time?
Yeah, and I want to emphasize that, I'm 58. I'm pretty intrepid. I mean, I've traveled pretty much all around the world by myself, but yeah, I had no qualms, no fears, concerns, or anything at all.
Yeah, like you said, it's civilized.
Yeah.
All right, and then talking about walking, did you have special shoes, or did you just wear sneakers? Do you need special shoes?
Well, you need light, what they would call light hikers. Everybody's different. Just, some people, I did see some people with like full-on hiking boots. But most people wear, like here in the States, there's a brand, Merrell. A lot of people wear those. I think mine was from Patagonia. Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's funny to me because whenever, I haven't hiked it. I would like to someday, but whenever I go to a village that's on the path, you see the folks who are hiking it at the cafes and whatever. So they spread out, they have a backpack, and they take off their shoes.
Yeah, and it's funny, like the French seem obsessed with blisters. And you see these little signs all, because in France the word for blister, ampoule, is the same as for light bulb.
Yeah.
And so you'll see these like little drawings and things with like light bulbs and little faces on them, and talking about like, my poor ampoule.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, it's the French sort of seem obsessed with blisters and like tending to their blisters and
well, yeah, it's important because if you have them, you can't really walk, can you?
I don't know. I did get a blister after probably about halfway through, because I have, even in just normal times, I have two toes that kind of touch, and so they rub together a little bit. But to my mind, it's the blister develops because it's your body basically trying to protect itself. Where it's and it's cushioning, and as long as that cushion is there, the little blister. For me, I didn't have any pain. The pain was, I guess, when the blister, if it breaks, Oh,
yeah. Well, I had one recently because I walked my normal walk, so my 6K that I do pretty much every day. Well, this is after the confinement. So during the confinement, I couldn't go very far. So I had cut down. Maybe I walk 2-3K a day instead of 6. But that one day, I went with different shoes that rubbed funny, and I came home, and the next day I had a big old, ampoule blister. Yeah. And I had to go see the doctor for something else, but I showed it to him, and he took care of it for me. So he cut it out. He did minor surgery. He removed that big, thick thing of skin and gave me stuff to cover it up. And for about a day and a half, it was not pleasant, but it healed really fast after that.
Yeah, I get the French, like one place I stayed, a woman was tending to her blisters. We were roommates, and they do this thing with like a needle and thread. Well, they'll take like a needle and thread and literally like thread it through the blister, and then you have to leave the two ends of the thread out so that it. And I was like, what is? It's like.
But this is brilliant. This is brilliant because if you don't have a thread, it'll just close itself up.
Right.
That's exactly what happened to me because I was trying to take care of it myself. So I had these alcohol pads, So I would take a needle, clean it real good with an alcohol pad, poke the thing, and lo and behold, 2 hours later, it was closed off again. And it's because there wasn't a thread. Genius people. I will use the thread next time.
I never heard of that. I've never seen anybody do that. So to me, it's like a cultural difference between French and Americans, certainly. Just this kind of obsession with blisters. Like I just don't get it.
And
it's like okay.
So you mostly ran into French people.
Yeah, it's 90% French people.
Oh, wow.
90% French people, unlike the Camino in Spain. And when I got to Saint-Jacques-de-Compostelle at the very end, it was kind of a shock to my system because suddenly there was like all these people from like all around the world. And hiking the Chemin, at least, of course, I went at the start of the season. The season, entre guillemets, goes from like mid-April to mid-October. And so I started, towards the end of April. And so there weren't, there'd be about a dozen people a night in the places where I was staying on average, sometimes a bit less, sometimes a bit more. And I was told that on average, there are about 100 people a day hiking on the Chemin, whereas in Spain it's 1,000.
Oh, wow.
So literally
much
10
busier.
times as many. Yeah, much busier. And when I got to Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, I literally had to kind of stop and like recalibrate, because it was jarring to have spent 3 weeks really not seeing very many people at all, certainly not during the day. And then suddenly, you get in this town and there's just like all these people and all these crowds, and everybody's got their hiking stuff, and it's just, because they're all getting their starting from to go to Spain.
So lots of people start in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port and go to Saint-Jacques.
Yeah, that's the starting point for the Camino into Spain.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. All right, so another place you stopped is La Cabane. Las Cabanes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how you say that. Las Cabanes, maybe.
Las Cabanes.
Yeah,
Las Cabanes. And that was a really cool place. Although I was told that it was potentially the last year that the family that I stayed with was going to be doing it, because I think they're about 80 years old.
Oh.
They were going to be sort of retiring from
Yeah.
that. But they were out. They had been farmers, and they had a farm and this cool old stone house, and so they were. I mean, here we'd call it Airbnb, but they're doing a gîte and renting out rooms, and they were super nice. It's just it's like you're in their home,
and they make you dinner.
Yeah, and they made us dinner, and then there was two French families actually who were staying, traveling through, and so we had this great dinner, and we're just talking, and to me that was, when people say what was the best part of the chemin, it was the evenings in the gîtes and the conversation, and because the French, I mean that's like such a huge part of French culture, and they just French love that,
Yeah, you sit around the table and you talk. Yeah,
exactly,
and they probably ask you all sorts of just questions that you were like. Like, did they ask you about American politics?
No,
Oh.
not so much. Well, they don't ask. They say they're sympathetic.
Yes.
Or they'll say like, well, we like Americans, we just don't like your politicians or your politics. But no, we didn't talk too much.
Not too much. Okay, that's good.
About politics. I don't we just talked about all kinds of things.
Yeah.
There's always lots of discussion about the chemin and what's happening. And also when I was there, literally the first night that I started out from Cahors was the night that Notre Dame caught on fire.
Yeah.
And so I woke up the next morning and, to this news. And so a lot of the discussion in the next 3 weeks was kind of, around what was happening there. And I learned how to say backlash in French.
Backlash. Do tell.
Oh, just because, after a couple of days, some of the, super wealthy people in France started pledging money for reconstruction.
Yeah.
And the, people in France were like, well, hey, where was all this money when, we've got we've had unemployment, or we've had these other,
the
quote
normal,
unquote, disasters, but you weren't pledging your money then, and now all of a sudden you've got all this money to spare.
Yeah.
So
well,
there was, So
how do you say back? I can't think of it. Like when
contre-coup.
Le contre-coup. Yeah, okay.
Oui, contre-coup.
Once you say it. And see, that's the thing. That you had a great time because you speak French, right? I mean, your French sounds really comfortable, like...
Yeah. In fact, it's funny. Sometimes I almost felt like I was a talking horse because like the French, like they're always so amazed that I shouldn't say anybody, but particularly an American can actually speak French.
Yeah.
We're
not used to this.
They're always like, it's like, oh wow, like you actually speak French.
Yeah.
And I spent 2 years in France in college, so. And part of that was as an au pair, so I got pretty fluent.
Sure. So do you think it's a must or it's a plus?
It's not a must. You can certainly do it without having any French, but it really, really helps And I met some people, some fellow travelers who did not speak French. One was a young Danish guy who was totally fluent in English, but didn't really know much French. And I also met a Korean couple who the guy spoke, enough English that, he and I could kind of talk, but again, like no French. And they were having to rely on like Google Translate on their phones.
Not the same.
No, it's not the same. And what would be tough, I think, is making reservations in the gîtes and the chambres d'hôtes, because some people, certainly in France, plan it all out ahead. Like I met one couple that they had planned an itinerary and they had made they'd written or phoned all the places along the way, and they had everything all reserved ahead. But most people don't do that, even the French people. In part because, you kind of
you don't know.
You don't know. I mean, you could get a blister and you get delayed, or
right,
or you take a wrong turn, or something. Yeah. Or there's a rainstorm and you have to sit it out for 2 hours. Or that happened. So generally, I would make reservations either the night before or like the morning of my stay, and you just call. And the gîte owners, there's too early in the morning. They're busy getting breakfast together. So usually maybe, kind of mid-morning, or then in the evening after dinner time. And you just call and you just say, do you have space? For one person, it's usually not a problem. And so I would talk on the phone in French, but, I have a friend who traveled on the gîte, and although he speaks French pretty well, talking on the phone, it's sort of like
it's different.
What's the word? Yeah, it's different. It's a hurdle that a lot of people find difficult to get over because you don't have the ability to gesture or whatever. It can be difficult. So. And sometimes you'll call a place, and especially on holidays, you have to be really careful that you know what the holidays are and that you plan ahead. Yeah. And make sure you have a reservation. Yeah.
Otherwise, your meat bag is going to be really handy.
Yeah.
Your sac à viande.
Yeah, and there was a time, not on this trip, but on the one 4 years ago, where I was in kind of, sort of a fairly touristy kind of area, and it was a holiday. And I had one place was closed. They had gone out of business. I called another place, gîte, and they had like a school group visiting. So they were full. And so when it was like 5 o'clock, I literally kept walking. And I was mentally prepared. I mean, it was warm. It was nice weather. So I thought, okay, well, if I have to, I'll just do, camping sauvage, like go off in the woods and, lie down. And that time I actually ended up staying in a lovely campground, which was one of my better places. But yeah, so you want to call ahead. And honestly, I'm not sure what you would do if you don't speak. A lot of the gîte owners, they know enough English to be able to get by. So, I think it wouldn't be too much of an issue. And the poor gîte owners are always saying like, "Oh, I wish my English were better."
Sure.
So.
Sure. Yeah. So when you stayed at that campground, did they have like bungalows or something?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, although that wasn't on the section from Cahors to Saint-Jean. That was actually in the Vallée du Sélet, the Sélet River Valley. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Let's move on to your next place, which was Lozerte.
Yeah, Lozerte is a hill town. So you come, back in medieval days, it was sort of a fortress at the top of a hill, and actually I would say it's representative of a lot of the places I stayed in this part of the Chemin, where and it relies on tourism now. And, because it's this, like the beau village, it's very quaint. It's very typically French.
Yeah.
But, you go up into these villages and like, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
It looks really pretty.
Yep.
But, there's in the off season outside of kind of summer tourist time, it's kind of dead. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been harping on that forever on the podcast, and I'm sure it shocks some people, but I don't think most of these plus beaux villages are really that nice unless you go on a weekend or in the summer or something. Because it's just dead.
That's it. They're dead. They're beautiful architecturally.
Yeah.
They're very quaint, and but there's nothing there. It's
and
just
you can't go into anything.
Yeah,
a lot of the time, it's all locked up.
Yeah, and there was like one, maybe two restaurants that were open because this was, I guess, the end of April. And the other thing I wanted to point out is a lot of these villages are what I would call food deserts. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's the other. You have to always make sure you have like what the French would call encas.
Yeah.
Like you have some snacks with you because. They're,
If it's a small enough village, it's not going to have any sort of grocery shopping.
No, and so like Lozère, there was a Intermarché at the bottom of the hill before you hike up into the town, and so like I stopped there and would buy stock up on some food, and then the gîte itself in Lozère, it was nice. It was although it had these like terrazzo concrete walls and these high ceilings, and it was kind of like an echo chamber. And there was a guy staying there he was this big guy, and he was a snorer. I mean, there's always going to be snorers, but this guy was like, it was just reverberating throughout the building. And so I actually took my little mattress on the bed. It was like a foam mattress. Took it down into the kind of living room area down below to try and get away from the noise. And the next morning, I was going back up the stairs, carrying my mattress back up, and somebody coming down the other way for breakfast said, like, "Oh, I wish I'd done that." So be sure to carry earplugs.
Yeah.
People.
Would you say so? If the mattress was small enough that you could carry it, it was not plush, right?
No, they're usually like just kind of foam, youth hostel type mattresses.
Yeah, not great. Not plush pillows, no, nothing like that, right?
No. But they're, for me it was fine. And when you've hiked for 12, 14 miles a day and you're tired, it's all good.
You probably go to sleep fairly easily.
Yeah.
Is there a fair amount of drinking going on in these places?
Not too much.
Okay.
In fact, I was kind of surprised. Like the general rhythm would be, you wake up at about, depending on your constitution, anywhere between about 6:30 and 7. Have breakfast usually between about 7:30, 8:30, and people are out the door by no later than 9. I was usually one of the last people out by about 9. Then you walk, you stop someplace for lunch, usually just, picnic. You get to where you're going, usually like late afternoon. You rest for a couple of hours, get set up, and then you'll eat dinner either, and usually like where you're staying or maybe a restaurant. You finish at, about 8:30, and then like people go to bed. People are in bed at like 9 o'clock.
They're tired, yeah.
They're tired. There's,
So people might have some drinks during meals, but that's it. There's no.
Yeah. And there's often, it's France, so there's going to be wine with dinner at the sheets. Yeah. But it's, it's a vin de pays, it's from some local cooperative or something.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that sounds good. All right, let's talk about your next place, Durfort-la-Capelette.
Yes, let's see. To look at my notes here.
Yeah, so it says gîte à la ferme de la Bessade.
Ah, okay. Yeah, because I remember, I don't remember the tech. Yeah, there wasn't really much of a town there.
Okay.
That was just, and that was, again, it was like a retired farmers. They've got some Polish people now who are actually running the farm. And again, you're just stayed in their home. It was just a home. I guess not anything like super remarkable.
Yeah.
About it.
But everywhere you went, you could take a shower and have a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
Excellent. Next one is in Moissac, so that's a big town.
Moissac. Yeah, so Moissac is a big town. So there, you can visit the cathedral and walk around and so on. Oh, there's a restaurant in Moissac that people had recommended to me. It was very good. It was called Le Fromagerie, like the cheese laughs, which is the French love puns, so it's a take on fromagerie. Anyway,
fromagerie. Oh, yeah, of course. Duh. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a lovely restaurant. I had a really delicious meal there, and I think it was about 18 euros or something. It was like a special Easter lunch. So that was nice. Stayed in a little gîte owned by a guy named Florian, who renovated the place with his dad. And a little small world story. This guy Florian. He's originally from Normandy, and I said one of my former coworkers, retired and moved to France, and he lives in Normandy and in Domfront. And he's like, my dad lives in Domfront.
Oh wow!
And it turns out this guy's dad directs the local theater company, amateur theater group, and my former coworker is in that group.
Amazing.
So you see, it's Le monde est tout petit.
Le monde est petit, oui. Oh, that's funny. You said he's a charming host, but not a great cook.
I actually ate dinner there, which in retrospect was a mistake because he that was he was very charming, but he just sort of opened a can of something, and then he made some crepes, and they were the worst crepes I've ever had in my life. But,
Florian, not a cook. You eat somewhere else.
Eat somewhere else.
That's fun. Okay, so we have too many to mention all of them, and again, people can see everything on your guest notes. I want to ask you about Lectoure because I have been there. Gîte l'Étoile Occitane, okay. Oh, so this is, shabby chic, you said. Comfortable bunk beds, feel rather like a youth hostel, impersonal. Aw. No.
It was fine. I mean, it's just, the thing about Lectoure that was fun was, it's fun, and I have mixed feelings about Lectoure. There's I guess in America we'd call it a spa. Yeah, but it's one of these French spa where it's really medicinal. Yeah, people go there for a cure. Yeah, paid for by the national health. Yep. But then it's in the afternoons they open it up to the public. And so you can go there and you pay 12 euros, and then you can just hang out there for the whole afternoon. And that was really fun because they had a heated pool, and they had a wet sauna and a dry sauna and lounge chairs and water jets. And so that was fabulous. That was it was like a spa day. We got there early in the day. And checked in, and then we had lunch, and we went to this place and just hung out for a couple hours and enjoyed the water. If you don't have a bathing suit, which I didn't, you can buy one there, and it's 12 euros.
A lot of stuff is 12 euros.
I know, everything's 12 euros. The thing about Lectoure, and this is illustrative of what you have to kind of be careful of. So the day before Lectour, I had stayed in this little town called Miradou. It was a village, and it's one of these food deserts. I mean, there's just not much in the town. There was a little store, but for whatever reason, it was closed when I was there. And so there's no place to buy any food.
Yeah.
And
so is this something you would know from your app?
No, because it says like there's a little superette in the town, and it was just closed.
Yeah.
Maybe it had gone out of business, or who knows. But I had some snacks with me. I had a Snickers bar. But my supplies were running low, and I tend to get kind of hypoglycemia anyway. And at one point, I was literally kind of like lightheaded, and had to take a break. And so I walked to Lectour, and it was 12 miles, and thinking like, okay, when I get to Lectour, I'll have lunch, right? So I get to Lectour, and because I'd had to kind of pause along the way, by the time I got to Lectour, it was like, a little after 2:00 in the afternoon, or maybe 1:30. Anyway, and I saw some fellow travelers that I knew, stopped to chat with them, and then and they were at an outdoor cafe. So then I go to order lunch, salad, big salad, and the guy is literally, the owner is just literally putting out the sign, with the slate with the menu things. And so I said, I'd like to order a salad. And he says, "Oh, on est fermé."
Oui.
We're closed.
Yeah.
And I'm like, really? Like, I can't even just get a salad? And he says, "No, it's 2:30. We're closed."
Yep. Yeah, you have to be really careful with that in rural France. They're not accommodating.
Yeah. No, not at all accommodating. And I was literally lightheaded. Like, I was getting dizzy. And I told them that. I mean, because I speak French, I said, like, I'm dizzy, like I'm almost going to faint. Yeah. And then he said, "Well, what do you want me to do?"
Yeah.
What can I do? And I said, "Well, you could serve me a salad."
Yeah.
Like, not be such a jerk.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, well, that's not going to help. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll go find a store. And again, there was like a little supermarket casino or something there in the town. So I get to the store, and it says closed for annual, holiday, congé, fermeture annuelle.
Yeah.
I was like, okay. So, yeah, and so I think I went to a tabac, and I got like a Snickers bar or like an Orangina. But I basically went from, having breakfast at 7:30 in the morning. I walked 12 miles.
And didn't have any real food. And
I basically, had a Snickers bar and, like some cookies and, some bread or cheese or something. And I was literally dizzy. And it was tough.
So we need to finish this off, but of all the places that we haven't talked about, is there one that you want to mention because it was either particularly good or particularly bad?
No. They're all. I'm pretty objective when I travel, so I figure there's it's not good or bad. It's just different.
Yeah. You went somewhere that had a composting toilet.
Actually, no. I take that back. One of my favorite stays was at another farm. A former working farm where the guy is now retired. His name is Jean-Michel. And it was in like a tiny little village, not even really a village. Oh gosh, I'm trying to look it up on my computer. My computer's died. Louvigny. So it's like a little, what they call a hameau. So it's a hamlet.
Oh yeah.
In a village. And it was called Chambre d'hôte ferme de la Une de la Coste.
Okay.
And this guy, Jean-Michel is his name, and he's running a gîte now, and he just loves it. He's like super, extroverted. He loves welcoming guests, and he's a fabulous cook.
Ah, that helps.
So, Yeah, and this is in the southwest. It's not too far from Po. And we had the most delicious meal. And there were like 15 of us. And it was just, everything was delicious. And it was all like local, either from his farm or, nearby. And everything was cooked in duck fat.
Of course. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah. And oh my God, it was so good.
Yeah. That sounds good. That sounds very good. So overall, would you recommend this sort of trip for a person like yourself traveling? I assume you did this by yourself?
Yes, I did it by myself.
Yeah.
And when you go by yourself, what tends to happen, I think particularly if you're a woman, is you kind of hook up with people. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times, people will have kind of similar paces when they walk. And so you kind of keep running into the same people, and then you'll see each other in the gîtes. And so you start to develop some friendships. And, so I met a few people like that I'm actually still in contact with.
Cool.
It's you can do it by yourself. It's wonderful.
Mm-hmm. So do you plan on doing the rest of it?
The rest meaning what, into Spain?
Yeah.
I don't have any interest in doing the main route in Spain, what they call the Camino Francés, just because I think it's just too much of too many people. I like doing kind of, staying in smaller places and not a lot of other people. Yeah. But they're just like in France, there are multiple routes in Spain as well. I've heard good things about what they call Camino del Norte along the north coast. That's supposed to be quite lovely. So
excellent.
I might do that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It's been delightful to talk to you, and I'll put all the stuff you sent me in the show notes for this episode.
Okay, sounds good.
Merci.
Gosh, it's like there's like too many things to talk about.
There's so much to talk about. We went through quite a bit, but not all of it. So if you want more details about where she stayed and what it was like, I like how you put it. Some places you said it's serviceable. It's perfect.
Yeah.
I know what that means. So some places you say wonderful host was, warm, genial, convivial. So yeah, people can read a lot into what you wrote. So they just need to take your comments. Merci beaucoup, Lisa.
De rien.
Au revoir.
Bye.
Again, I want to thank my patrons for supporting the show and giving back. Patrons get several exclusive rewards for doing so. You can see them at patreon.com/join us. Patreon, join us, no spaces or dashes. Thank you to all of you for supporting the show. Some of you for many years now. You are fantastic. And a shout out this week to new patrons, Fuzzy Moose and Mark Sampson. Thank you so much for becoming patrons and making this podcast possible. And I'm still working on new rewards about driving in France. I'm not sure if I'll get one out before this episode is out. Maybe I will. We'll see. Another way to support this podcast is to hire me to be your itinerary consultant. It'll cost you $50, but you get a custom itinerary that will fit your needs and save you lots of time. Plus, you'll get the input of a local. Email Annie@joinusinfrance.com to set that up and write itinerary review in the subject line. For my personal update this week, well, I'm still at home, staying safe and riding this pandemic out. The number of infections in France are going up. This week, we've had between 1,000 and 1,500 new cases every day in France. Thankfully, the number of fatalities is still going down, and hospitals have plenty of excess capacity. But it's pretty clear that French people are going on vacation and mingling a lot, which leads to more infections. Right now, the biggest source for infections is family gatherings and family parties. Yeah. That would not feel good, right? If you invite all your siblings and whatever and everybody comes down with COVID. Yeah, no, that would not feel good. More people stayed home than normal this July. I know this because I hear a lot of kids goofing around their private pools, and we have a lot of private pools where I live. But August is going to be the telltale. Normally, in August, my village is empty, dead. Not a soul in the streets. I know this because the first year we moved back to France 15 years ago, we didn't plan to go anywhere in August because we were just settling in. It was so depressing. Many stores were closed. There was nobody on the streets, nobody at the grocery store. The shelves at the grocery store were not stocked very much because they knew there wouldn't be anybody around to buy the stuff. No kids around, no more sound in the distance, completely empty and dead. So we're about to live through that again, and we'll see if it's the same or if more people stay home this year on account of the pandemic. I've made progress on the book. It's fun to do. I keep busy with lots of podcasting tasks, and I'm also been reading more, mostly mystery novels. You know, it's a problem with mystery because cozies are too simplistic and thrillers are too gruesome. So it's hard to find a happy medium. I'm trying many of them, but I haven't found a favorite yet. So I'm open to suggestions if you have some for me. I've also attacked a big weed problem we have under one of our terraces. We have something in France called devil's weed. It's a weed that sends out rhizomes, you know, like these rope-looking things that go underneath your anti-weed cloth or tiles of whatever you put down. In my case, I had put anti-weed cloth and sand and tiles, and it's going right underneath of that. I guess if we had poured cement, it wouldn't live under that, but it's quite happily going under the brick we laid. So I'm pulling it all out by hand because it's not cemented in. It's just put down, you know. So I'm pulling each one of the tiles and pulling the weeds by hand and adding salt to the sand. I hope it'll make it inhospitable for devil's weed. But next time it starts popping up again, I'm just going to go get to it right away because, it's a scourge. But today was too hot for that. It's 102 degrees in Toulouse today and tomorrow, and it's that hot in much of France for at least a couple of days. So I'm staying in the office with the AC on, and I even set the alarm to go walking earlier than normal because I am not going to walk in that heat. If you enjoyed the show, introduce it to a friend and show them how to subscribe and listen. Send questions or feedback to Annie@joinusinfrance.com. Have a great week at home. Please stay safe, and I'll talk to you next week. Au revoir. The Join Us in France Travel Podcast is written and produced by Annie Sargent and copyright 2020 by Addicted to France. It is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license.